Hey y'all, it's Stephen Van Kampen-Lewis on August 14th, 2021. It is the morning, so you guys get to see sort of how bright my orchids are growing at this time of the day. It's about 10 to 10:30 a.m. And you can see that they're basically, these are the Catasetums. They're basically in full sun at this point of the day. And they'll be in this really bright light, basically again full sun, until probably about 11 or 12, and then the shade of the oak trees kicks in. Same thing for my Cattleyas over there. You can kind of see them back there. Again, super bright. They love it. But that's not the point of today's video. Actually, today I just want to take you on a quick tour of the Catasetums and to show you how they're doing, and hopefully how your Catasetums are looking at this time of the year. And then there's some really big ones right now. So I'll pull some of those larger ones aside and put them on a table, and then we can kind of look at them a little more closely. And I'll talk a little bit about PET and why, and really the sweet spot that I've found in terms of growing conditions. So light, fertilizer, media type, and maybe a few other things. And then at the end, I've got an import from Floralia that I got late spring, early summer. I think it was around June, which is really the best time to get the Catasetums in from South America, because they're just going to sleep. And this one is waking up and doing really nicely. And I'll talk a little bit about how I've been able to kickstart that growth period a little bit. So let's turn the camera around and look at some plants. All right, so as you can see, everything is pretty much in full growth mode, and we are getting, I wouldn't say towards the end of the growing season. I'd say certainly the second half of the growing season, where a lot of the plants have reached their final height, and some of the bulbs are actually mature enough that they're not going to be growing a whole lot more. At this point, they're just sort of accumulating nutrients, maybe getting a little fatter, probably not getting a whole lot taller. But then there's some that are still actually not even close to being done in terms of height. So let's take a look at some of these guys. Again, you'll notice the PET method. These guys are all growing in cypress mulch here on top, with a little bit of inorganic media on the bottom, and that's where the water well is, of course. As you can see, there's 2 holes here on the side, and so there's this much water in each of these pots, basically at all times. And as I'm going around, I'll show you some roots and what your roots hopefully look like at this point of the year. I'll also point out that there's a lot of spikes. The ants are kind of doing their thing, drinking the happy sap, and that's okay. And some of the more seasonal species, like Catasetum mattogrossoense, which really only blooms once for me. It's kind of a small plant. So hopefully no bugs will bite off the end of the new spike here, as has happened on several of my plants, which is frustrating. But when you grow outside in Texas, you got to be prepared for that. So this is one of my old imports that I got and has acclimated nicely to our conditions here. This is Catasetum drurense from Bella Vista Orchids. Again, another one of my older imports, and really cool flowers, one that you almost never see in the United States. So I'm excited to see that one bloom this year. Here's another one of those plants that is probably not, it still has a long way to go in terms of growth. This is Tenebrosum by Colosum. This is one of the ones that woke up kind of late. I have another one of these guys that is well on its way to being pretty mature, and I don't know that it'll grow a whole lot more. So even, same crosses or even the same species can be at different stages, certainly this time of the year, depending on when they decided to wake up and start growing. Another thing I want to point out is the size of the leaves for a lot of these larger statured plants should be pretty big at this point. So this one is still in full growth mode. This one will continue growing taller, and I can tell that because the leaves are still fairly close to one another on the growth, as opposed to, let's say, this monstrous bulb here, where the leaves are pretty well spaced apart. So even here at the top, they're a little crowded, so this might grow a little taller, but ultimately I think this is as big as it's going to get. You can see there's a spike down there, and this will be one of the plants that I pull on the table, and this is the goal, right, is having these bulbs that are significantly larger than last year's bulbs. So I'll talk a little bit more about that one in depth. To be honest, I'm not even sure which one that is, so I'll have to find the tag, and like I said, I'll bring it over to the table and we can chat about it a little bit more. Again, here's another one where I suspect this bulb is probably as tall as it's going to get. It might even be as round as it's going to get for the year. But you know, this is certainly not the time when you start thinking about dormancy quite yet. The plants will let you know. And one of the things, and I've mentioned it in my other videos, is you see these sort of light green to white lines here on the sheath coming from the leaf surrounding the bulb. Those will start to get dark when the bulb is maturing. These light lines will become a darker green. They'll eventually turn yellow, and then the leaves will start falling off. So that's one of the tips and tricks, I guess, when you're watching your plants to determine if they're getting close to dormancy. And as you can see, that these guys are nowhere near that. So this is that other tenebrosum by callosum I told you about. As you can see, it's much farther along in its growth cycle, and it is spiking right here. And it's actually, that'll be its third spike off this bulb for the season. And you can see the label there. This is one of Fred Clark's from Sunset Valley Orchids. This is a Cycnoches. This is that Cooperi that I showed a couple weeks ago in a video. It may have actually been last week. It's grown even since then. So this is, the Cycnoches tend to be longer, skinnier bulbs than a lot of the Catasetums, which you can see this comparison right here. And hopefully this one will actually keep growing. They do get even taller than this. You know, a good sized plant can even get this tall. So I'm not expecting that on this particular growth, maybe next year. But again, you can see how the leaves here, the sheath, these lines on the sheath are a little darker. So this one is a little farther along in its maturity process, and I don't see any real yellowing yet. So it's not really close to dormancy, but again, you can compare. Eventually, see this Catasetum over here, how it's got the white lines around the sheath, around the bulb, will eventually start to darken and get darker green like this. This is Sanguinium by Tabulari. I got this as a division from a friend on Orchid Board, and it put out a spike. It's a weird looking flower. I'm super excited to see it again, or to see it blooming. You can see that it put out this spike, and I think a grasshopper came along and just snipped the top off. And so I didn't get any flowers, but you can see it's putting out another spike right there. So this one will be really cool. I'm excited to show you guys what this one looks like. It's a super bizarre flower. You can see these roots, just crazy amount of roots growing straight down into that water well. I absolutely love it. This one is Catasetum schunkii. This is an import that I got some time ago. It's kind of slow. I'm not sure what's going on with this one. You can see that the new growth is pretty far behind. It woke up later than a lot of the other ones, so hopefully this one continues to grow. You know, I don't know that it necessarily will. You can see that it sort of has that mature bulb shape already. So this new growth might be as big as it's going to get, which is frustrating. Such a cool species. I've got a couple of these, so if this one doesn't do well, I won't be too sad. This is actually Barcaria whartoniana, which is not a catasetum, but I just noticed it's got a couple spikes. So this will be the second set of flowers for this plant this year. Very cool. On the other side, so we're on the sort of back side compared to where the sun is. You know, this side of the rack is growing quite quickly, and it's as good. I've got a Catasetum maculatum here with a spike. Again, you can see this bulb. This is one I just chopped up pretty severely, so I bet this bulb won't get much bigger, and you can see that that bulb is significantly smaller than the previous year's bulbs. But when you chop up a plant, you know, it's to be expected that first growth afterwards can be a little smaller than what you're looking for. Obviously, this is a nice, this is another one that got chopped up really brutally this year. This is Catasetum Black Knight, one of my absolute favorite ones. It's that really dark one that I like to show. You can see that some creature knocked off one of these flowers, but that's okay. I still have lots left. This is another one that's a little behind in terms of where its growth is compared to the other ones. This is also Catasetum schunkii. They do kind of wake up later, but you can see that the shape of this growth is long and skinny. So it is still really in growth mode. And I'll bring these two schunkii over to the table to compare them side by side to show you what a mature bulb that's stunted looks like compared to just a young bulb that's still actively growing. Let's see what else is interesting. Another spike on this one. Two spikes. You can see the two spikes right there. The label is faded. I need to make new labels for these guys. I actually don't know what this is. I'll bring it over to the table and we can talk a little bit more in depth about that one. Leaves, leaves, leaves. Sunset Valley Orchids is, of course, where most folks in the United States get their Catasetums from, myself included. This is Catasetum pileatum, and this is the variety imperial, which will be a big, giant red one. I actually haven't seen this one bloom yet, so I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't bloomed. This is one that typically blooms on an immature growth, so I'm not expecting flowers from this growth this year, but I will certainly be looking for flowers next year. What else have we got? This guy is opening some flowers. Looks like this is my Catasetum tabulari variety rhinocerum. This is just opening up. This is another one that got really brutally cut this year, but the new growth is cranking. This one is just bulletproof. It wants to have humongous growths all the time, and I chop it up fairly regularly. You can see that it's already produced a spike earlier in the year, and now it's blooming again on this one. It looks like these are going to be really nice male flowers. I haven't seen... Oh, there's a hummingbird. That's weird. You can see that the hummingbird is interested in that salvia right there. This is the big red sage. This species is almost extinct in Texas, so it's really cool that I have one. And you can see the hummingbirds are actually pollinating this guy, and I can see some seeds that are ready to be harvested, so I will do that right after this video. Anyway, that was cool and unexpected. So let's take some of these plants over to the table and start chatting about them. Okay, so I grabbed some of these Catasetums that I had mentioned earlier that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit more about. And I guess I will start with this monster. So this is the goal. This is Catasetum Fongsing, actually. I got this from my friend William Green. It is huge, 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 huge. So without having the water spill on me. In fact, I'm just emptying the water out right now so it doesn't spill on me, so that I can kind of hug this plant as a size reference, so you can see how big this is. You know, if I put my fingers around, I can barely touch my fingers. So, you know, this bulb is taller than my hand. And so last year's bulb, which was a really nice bulb, was about this big. This bulb is significantly larger than last year. So that's the goal, right? That's what you want to be doing, is each one of your growths should be significantly larger than the previous year. And you can see that. So as you can tell, William Green was doing a really good job with this one, because each of the growths that he had were getting significantly larger as they were growing. So he was doing a great job. And this flower is such a beautiful plant. I'm so excited. I'm not a huge fan of the complex hybrids, but this one is beautiful. And again, you can see the roots. They're growing in the PET method. All those white lines is just a huge, robust root system growing into the water well. So, and then of course we have this spike here. I don't know if there will be another one. Hopefully there is. Let's see if I can pull this out. Nope, no other spikes. So just the one right now, but this is one that can bloom multiple times per year. So I attribute my success to this: hot conditions. Catasetums love heat. If your temperatures can get well above 90 degrees, they're gonna love it. 85 during the growing season is okay as well. This water well is dumping water all over the table here. 85 plus is good. 90 to 95 to 100 plus is ideal for these guys. They really like it. Again, I grow mine in the PET method, where there's a water well on the bottom here. As you can see, most of it's already come out, but you know, there's inorganic media here on the bottom, and then wood, cypress mulch is what I use here on top. That's it. It's just 2 layers instead of the original 3 layers, which I was doing for a while, and then realized that I could switch to 2 layers and use cheaper ingredients and have the same results, or maybe even better results. Another thing that I attribute to the success of these plants is to this Jim's Purely Organic slow release fertilizer. It's a powder. I dump it into these little pots and squish it in, then I get it wet, and it turns into this sort of hard ball that dissolves slowly over time. So again, this is what you want your Catasetums to look like. And then I wanted to compare those 2 Catasetum shunkii to show you the difference between a stunted growth and a small young new growth. So both of these are the same species. Both of them are imports that I received at different times. So this is the stunted growth, and you can see, and as I showed earlier, you can clearly see the bulb here. So this growth probably won't get much larger, which is frustrating because it's much smaller than the previous growth. And honestly, I don't know why that is. You know, the imports are pretty temperamental, and the species, Catasetum shunkii is kind of a temperamental species, though not quite as much as denticulatum. Now, compare this sort of stunted growth to a small young growth, and you can see how I can't see any type of bulb here. This is still a long, skinny asparagus type shoot, you know, and it is not decided that it is large enough to start forming that bulb. So compare and contrast this stunted growth with this small, immature growth, and notice the differences. So this one still has plenty of time to hopefully develop a bulb that's much larger than the previous one. As you can see, it's fairly large. So I'm hoping that this bulb will get to be this big, you know, by the time it goes dormant, maybe around November. Catasetum shunkii in my conditions does seem to wake up a little later, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. and these ones. So I wanted to show you the differences between a smaller plant of the same cross. This is the Tenebrosum bicolosum, which is really, really one of my favorite hybrids. It is a primary and just has these super bizarre looking flowers that really look a lot like the colosum parent. It's almost like you're getting just colosum in this particular cross, but you're getting that sort of hybrid vigor that comes from hybrids. So, see this little growth here? This growth, I think I actually chopped this one up. I may have sent a back bulb of this to my friend Noel in Georgia, so that may be why this one is a little smaller. I suspect that this growth here won't get much larger. Again, you can see that the bulb is forming. It might get a little taller, it might get a little fatter, but I don't think it's going to be larger than last year's growth. Now compare that with the same cross. This plant is probably the same age. I got them at different times, but you can see how big this bulb is and how robust that root system is. Compared to this one, the label's covering up most of that one, so you have to take my word for it. The root growth on this one is significantly larger. Also of note is that with these larger plants, they drink so much water. So I hit these guys in the evening with water. Oh, by the way, water your plants in the evening during summer. Trust me, your plants will appreciate it. So this one has already consumed all the water in the bottom of the pot here since I watered it yesterday evening. So this much water was sitting in the bottom after I finished watering yesterday, and it's already consumed it by morning. So these guys are very, 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 very thirsty. Last thing I want to show is my import from Floralia of Catasetum egertonianum red. Hopefully that shows up. And I got this a few months ago. So with Catasetum imports, you want to get them in spring. May is the best time of year to get Catasetum type imports. They're just going to sleep, and it is possible if you get them early enough to wake them up during your same summer, and that is what is happening here. I showed this little plant on the Cycnoches video that I did recently, and that little nubbin was much smaller, and I wasn't entirely sure what it was going to do, and it has activated. So this is one that is nice and fat and plump. It got exposed to rain. I let it dry out significantly between waterings, but it is summertime, so letting your catasetums that are still dormant get a little wetter than you would in the wintertime is okay, especially for these imports. So this guy, probably normally has a 4 to 5 month dormancy, and when I'm saying dormancy, I'm saying by the time the plant drops the leaves and is ready for water again. So it is actively growing during the latter half of that period. But this, like I said, I got this I think in June. So the fact that it had maybe a month and a half rest and is now actively growing again is a really good sign. So I'm excited to see this one. Maybe I'll even get blooms this fall. I think the plant is a little too small for that, but you can always hope. Anyway, if you have any questions about imports, about catasetums, about any of this stuff that I mentioned today, or other stuff, let me know down in the comments, and I'll get back to you pretty quick. Have a great weekend.